Hello, my name is Marcus and welcome to Tabletop Reviews, where today I'm finally back with another video. This time it is 1911, Aamundsen versus Scott. A retelling of the historical battle that happened in 1911, actually first ended in 1912, where Royal Aamundsen and Robert F. Scott was fighting to get to the South Pole first. The South, it's down in Antarctica. Which is a very interesting little small game, so let's do the regular setup right now. First, the board will be placed between both players, and then the meeples will be placed on their corresponding boats, not starting circles. Then you can shuffle all the cards and place the pile somewhere near the board, and then take the top 3 cards face up next to the board, next to the pile. And then both players draw a starting card. Now throughout the game there are 2 main actions you will do. Drawing cards. You can simply draw the rightmost card of the 3, immediately refilling of course. You can exchange a single card discarded to take the 2 rightmost cards. Remember to immediately refill the line. Or you can discard 3 cards to take the 3 face-up cards, remembering to refill the line immediately, of course. And playing cards. To move your meeple 1 space, you play 1 card matching the color of the circle right after your meeple. If you wish to move more than 1 circle, you play 2 cards matching the color of any subsequent circle after the first one. Each player has their own joker card, a card that can be any color. The Scott player has the Mongolian horse, and the Aamundsen player has Greenland dogs. Each player can also get the other player lost by playing 2 cards. Crevice is for the Aamundsen player and Blizzard is for the Scott player. You play 2 of these cards and move your opponent to the closest question mark space backwards. The cards do not have to be matching in color, just have to be 2 identical ones. Now, playing 1 more of these cards can send your opponent backwards 1 question mark space. And to get unlost, you simply have to play a card matching the color of 1 of the 2 regular spaces next to the question mark. In the game there are 2 colorless cards that have an effect when played. The compass, its use depends on where you are. If you are behind the 85 degrees line, you are moved forward 1 space. Now if you are in front of it, you are moved backwards 1 space. You cannot use the compass to reach the South Pole. So before reaching the South Pole, you are forced to play it and move backwards 1 space before you can reach the South Pole. The equipment loss card is played in front of your opponent. Your opponent's hand size now limited to 5 instead of 7, and they must discard any excess cards that they have. And 3 colored cards that have an effect when used to take cards. The drop of supplies card allows you to take an extra card drawn from your opponent's hand, as long as your own hand doesn't exceed the limit of 7 cards. The good weather card, when played, allows you to draw an extra card from the top of the deck, and if that card's color matches the color of the good weather card, you get to move your meeple forwards 1 space, no matter the color of that space. The sacrifice card forces your opponent to discard any good weather and joker cards they may have in their hand. So that was the regular setup for this game, but there's an entire different side to it. So let's check out the setup for the 4 expansions. Advanced mode asks you to have 6 cards face up, and any action that refers to the 3 cards, you use the rightmost cards. Patrons. 4 cards to maybe give you a boost. You shuffle them up and draw 1 card. Now they are named differently but do basically the same. Show Producer / Press Baron allows you to start on the first circle rather than the ship. Engineer / Architect allows you to have a larger starting hand. 3 for Aamundsen, 4 for Scott. The Philanthropist / Politician. This is a joker card that can be played whenever you want, and it does not count towards your hand size. Very nice. Army Officer, yes, they're named the same, allows you to discard the first joker card of your opponents that appear, so Greenland Dog if you are Scott. Food depots. First you roll the d6 die that came in the box, and the first depot is placed
that many spaces away from the ship. The next depot is placed 2 spaces forwards or backwards from that. You then draw 3 rather than just 1 card and choose 1 card to be placed at each depot, so you still have a starting hand of 1. When you then later on in the game move to one of these spaces, you draw the corresponding cards. Weather. When you move past a peril, the black lines, you draw a weather card and roll the die. The card will show you what the roll gives you. All the cards have 5 lines, and the top line of the card, weather card, allows both players to draw a card. The second line of the weather card allows the first player to pick a card out of the 3 face-up, and the 2 others go to the other player. And of course, refresh it. Before it is refreshed, the 2 cards go to the other player. The third line lets players switch 1 card with one another. The fourth line discards all face-up cards and of course refreshes them immediately. Whether you have 3 or 6, they are all discarded. The fifth line forces both players to discard a card. You may not discard colorless cards like the compass. It must be a colored card.
Okay, for this last expansion I'm going to be talking over because it's a lot to explain. Anyways, so this one you can do when someone has reached the North Pole. This is Robert Scott, that's very historically inaccurate. Aamundsen has reached the North Pole. You flip the board over, place the players back where they were, like that. So now Robert Scott still has to reach the North Pole before he can head back. You take these 10 cards right here, these 10 cards, including the boat cards, and shove them into the deck. I'm not going to do that right now because of cleanup. And then basically now, of course, it's Aamundsen has reached, so he can start moving back down. Robert Scott needs to real quick reach before he can go down again. First special one is this one. I'm just going to show you. That is both a blue and a red. So the real exciting bit comes down here. When every single one of them. So basically, you when you're on the green one here, let me just explain that. This is a green one. Just bring it closer. You're on the green one here. Any color the card, and you can achieve, and you can reach this one. But from then on, you need both a symbol and a color. So here you have a blizzard and a green. This is a crevice and a yellow. So going all the way down. Now if we're talking about this spot right here, which is a red horse, a yellow horse wouldn't do it. So it could be either the horse symbol or it could be the color red, depending on what else you have in your hand. But it can't be both, unless it is like this, which is down here, a blue dog, and this is a blue dog. It has the color blue and it has the symbol dog. Then it counts. Then the player, it's actually have to flip it around. The player can play this card to move into the blue dog spot. And then to reach your boat, you need to have the boat that matches. So you have here for Aamundsen the Fram, and for Scott the Terra Nova. Now you're probably thinking, well, hey, couldn't your opponent just draw up the card that is your boat and keep you from ever reaching the port? Well, no, because if you do that, you will have to get rid of every single one of your cards and give your opponent the boat. So there's sort of this mix. So why you not? So I usually play with you just get the boat to start with, because that's like whatever. Well, but you know, it could be an interesting thing to see when the boat shows up. Now, if you have this one in your hand, the equipment loss, you take that onto your hand. You now have a maximum of 7 cards again, and this is a wild, either symbol or color. The compasses work as normal on these steps up here, but they do not work down here. Well, actually, they count as fuck's sake. They count as a bloody wild card as well. It's any color, any symbol, the compass, that is. When you go down here, normal up here, but down here it's a wild card. And then, you know, whoever gets back to the boat first is the one that wins. And if you are Robert Scott, your journey should end about here, I believe. If you look at the way to the sea, about there. For historical accuracy, it's about there. You can correct me if I'm wrong. And that was the last little expansion here.
Alright, that's it. No more fluffing about with that. It was a little bit of a different transition into it. I hope you liked it. Really hope you enjoy what I've worked. It's been an hour now. I'm not done yet. Anyways, that was the setup and the gameplay of 1911, Aamundsen versus Scott. I of course discussed how you win it. There's one thing I forgot to mention. Well, actually I don't, like in the regular one, you reach the South Pole, the North Pole, the South Pole first, you win obviously, then you have to way back, which is getting back to ship first. But if you go through the entire deck twice, then both of you lose, you are lost in the Antarctic. Just, I think I forgot to mention that. I know I forgot to mention that. I've just recorded it, so that's why I should record these after. Anyways, where was I? Right. So the gameplay of Aamundsen versus Scott. So with that's just the regular game, right? The 3 cards out, nothing else added. You're just fighting to get to the South Pole. That is very fine, actually. I like the thing of like you get 1 card free, or you switch 1 card to 2 cards, or you trade your entire hand, right? It's a good way of being like the few cards. It's good to have just take few cards at a time, but you can get rid of your entire hand if those 3 cards are great. But you need all 3 other cards to do that. It's a nice exchanging of the cards and putting in value to them. Very decently, well done. I think it would be quite boring if you didn't have the interesting cards, right? The good weather, I've already forgotten what they're called. Those cards. It wouldn't be as interesting. Now there's a little bit of take that in it. You take a card from your opponent, or you're forced into discard cards. In another instance, you obviously diminish what your opponent can do with only 5 instead of 7 cards as the maximum on your hand. So there is a bit of take that in it, which if you look at it thematically doesn't make any sense, because Aamundsen and Scott, whilst they were enemies in the race, it's not like they were trying to stop each other. They both were on this journey together, and Aamundsen actually offers some help to Scott, who ignored him and promptly died, because you should listen to the Scandinavians when they offer you help. So that is of course a little bit meh. But some interesting names to them, like it's good weather. In good weather you have a good day, and you have the found supplies thing again. If you found some extra supplies, that's always nice in the Arctic. But it takes you out a little bit thematically. Other than that, the theme is fine. It's decently, right? To explore Antarctic you need good preparation, but you also need some good luck, because exploring the Antarctic is hell. And of course the main race is to the South Pole first, and yeah, when we've played it usually it's Aamundsen win. Like you've played a couple of times and Aamundsen wins. We're very historically accurate players, apparently. Not quite on purpose. So yeah, but that's sort of the gameplay. Let's talk about the themes. First of all, I love these kinds of history. Aamundsen vs. Scott is a story that I know quite well. I also showcased that in the setup. It's about where he would have ended his journey. Whilst not knowing entirely how the map is set up, of course, in the range. And with that, this little game here is lovely. And especially one thing that I've forgotten to mention in this gameplay part is the expansion ones. Those are pretty brilliant. You have, first of all, the food storage depots. That is something very much used, mostly by Scott, but Aamundsen as well did use them. And it's a nice neat little touch to it, where you can plan, again, you plan your journey, you plan here and here we are going to find some supplies. And you plan which supplies that is. Of course, with the added bit of like, it is quite lucky, but you can see the colors ahead, so you can sort of say, well, there's a green and then 2 spaces, so I'll put a green down there to be the thing that I draw up. The benefactors is also nice. Both Scott and Aamundsen, of course, had some benefactors helping them to get there. Scott had some better benefactors. He had better sales. He had a better sales pitch, and he was British, so that helped him. So that's why there's this dissimilar, right? Scott's are better than Amundsen's. In most cases, you can start with 4 cards instead of 3. You can discard the first 2 dogs rather than just the first horse. I don't really mention that, but it's actually kind of thematic, because Scott had access to better help through his patrons. Of course, it's to balance it out, I think, that you only draw 1 of them. Depending on the one you get, it's a small advantage, but not the most. So it's a lovely little expansion set to it. And of course you have then the weather expansion. It's lovely. Of course, it's lucky whether the weather or not, so that's just adding some luck to the game, which is fine. But of course, in reality, it would be more something you could plan for, because, well, not necessarily. Sometimes a storm would surprise the Arctic explorers, but usually they could sort of see signs. So a little bit thematic in this touch there, but a nice little touch of some luck and some interesting things to help both players, which is of course a little bit sucks a little bit if you're a little bit ahead and you help your opponent just by being ahead. That would of course suck a little bit. That's sort of the bad side of it, like, oh, I get to draw a card but you do as well, although I am like 3 spaces ahead of you and I've done this only. It sucks. And then you have the way back, which is an interesting addition to the game. I definitely, when we played it, I was Scott and my friend was Aamundsen. He got to the South Pole first and then I got back first. So I was like, well, you won the important part. The entire part of the fort in this one is getting to the South Pole. But it was definitely also a struggle to get back, and very important to get back. Aamundsen did manage to do so, but Robert F. Scott did not manage to get back. He is dead and buried on Antarctica, alongside many of his men who gave their lives trying to reach the South Pole, and that I think should be quickly acknowledged, of course. The way back is fine. You can see if you can do better than Scott, but again, the real race is to the South Pole. The only thing that the way back really does is this thing with multiple color. You need both a symbol and a color, and adds in that the compass on the other colorless one is now a joker, which counts for anything. I think it's more lucky than anything. About like, oh, I got the dog, the blue dog, right? And well, that's just gonna help me a lot more than it's gonna help you. So a little bit iffy on that, just because it adds too much luck, but it's still a fine little addition. The other 3 expansions though I really love having in here, and they call it expansions, that's why I'm calling it expansions. In most it would just be modules, right? In Lagrange or in Heat it's just modules, it's not expansions that's within it. Just to give 2 examples of games I actually have here in my little office. But overall, both the theme really attracts me because I really love the story. I love Antarctic explorer stories. This story of reaching the South Pole. I've heard about the Danish guy and Robert Barry, and recently I heard a story of another person. I can't remember names. Who tried to go across the Antarctic on foot, right, but failed. And it's a very interesting story about how they are trying to save his men who were shipwrecked, because they love being shipwrecked and stuff. It's a very brilliant story. I love these Arctic explorer stories, and this is a game based on it. That's amazing. Make some more of these games, please. Now, it's very simple gameplay, as I say, but it doesn't hurt at all. The expansion's really upgraded, going from just, drawing some cards and sometimes having to do a little bit with the good weather and a little bit take that, just elevating, that's the word, not evaluating, elevating it a little bit with the Patreons, with the food depot, storage depots, and the weather expansion. It really just adds to a brilliant little 15-20 minute game, because it doesn't take longer than that. And that's another thing. If this was an hour-long game, it would be terrible, I think. I would not enjoy it. But it's a 15-20 minute game, so that's brilliant. And with that being said, does it lie to you? So 2 players, 20 minutes, 10 and up. The 2 players is of course very accurate, and talking about theme, it's decently accurate because it is Aamundsen versus Scott, but they of course had an entire team behind them, and it would be interesting if you played a little with that, where there's like a main guy and you have a support maybe. It could be interesting, but the 2-player game very much works for it. It's the same with the Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. If you have a 2-player game, you get the idea. It's 1 against 1. Sure, there's a bunch of people on the sides, but it's 1v1. 20 minutes, as I say, it's 15-20 minutes. If you go the way back, it adds a bit of time to that. It takes a little bit longer, especially with the more higher demand, and because you have to wait for the ships to arrive. But if you just play the regular game, it's 15-20 minutes. If you know the game, it's probably just 15 minutes, honestly. So short, lovely game. Only for 2 players, so that's like, it's a nice game here in the evening, right? It's getting a little bit late on here in Denmark right now. I could bring this down and play it with my wife right now. We don't have a lot of time but we have a little bit of time here. We could play this game quick. That's nice. 10 and up, just a basic game of color matching and drawing cards. Could work. There's some elements to it that I think brings it a little bit up. You know, the good weather and the gun and and finding those and to take that elements. But then again, Uno is a favorite amongst my cousins, so I could see those confusing each other a little bit, and especially with some of the expansion, it could be a little bit too much for something younger. But the base game is definitely available for something 10 and up. So I've actually managed to remember to talk about the theme this time. I usually forget. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but maybe not. Anyways, their final rating of this one. I think that's what I've sort of reached now, no? I can never remember. Yes, the final rating. I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10. As I said, I really love the story behind it. It's super awesome. It's a decent enough road, like it's split off into two because Aamundsen and Scott did not take the same route, so that makes sense. There's a color mismatch, right? Like they don't, one or two of the colors doesn't show up. Yeah, blue shows up on Scott and red on Aamundsen, and not the vice versa. It's only green and yellow that shows up on both. Again, they chose two different routes, which were very much different. This adds that difference to it. Of course, this will make also take back the fact that the horses are as good as the dogs. That's not historically accurate at all, whatsoever. And the thing that they get lost, because I don't think any of them actually got lost at any point. But it's a brilliant game. I really love it. It's an 8 out of 10. The reason it doesn't go higher just this take back of a lot of luck and to take that elements to it. I think that's what's holding it back a little bit. Just to not fully bring in the historically accurate aspect of it. But it's a really brilliant game. I would play it again and again and again. I actually really liked it. So it's staying in my collection. Definitely staying in my collection. I'm gonna make a shelf of historic games if I can find any other historic games that are any good. But yeah, thank you very, very much for watching this here video. Of me, another tabletop reviews, another game reviewed. I have a whole bunch behind me that I need to also get reviewed at some point. But until next time, bye!